is Emily Channel Justice, Director of the Temerty Contemporary Ukraine Program at the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute. This is Teacup Briefs, where I discuss the main takeaways from an important event or a paper that has come out recently. Today, I'm going to take a slightly different angle and talk a little bit about my own work in Warsaw, Poland that I did in April and May of 2022. As I've discussed before, Poland has been the most popular destination for Ukrainian refugees, in part because the Polish government lifted many of its restrictions and requirements for crossing the border. As of July 6th, almost 4.5 million Ukrainians have crossed the border from Ukraine to Poland, although millions have also returned. When I arrived to Warsaw, I immediately went to the main train station, where there were signs in Ukrainian, Polish, and English for the various kinds of support that was available to refugees. There was an information desk at the center where Ukrainians could get information about how to get free tickets to other parts of Poland or elsewhere in Europe. They could find information about housing options in Warsaw, and they could also learn about job opportunities. Ukrainians could get free SIM cards for their phones. They could get medical care for their immediate needs, and they could eat hot food at any time of the day at a tent sponsored by the World Central Kitchen that was set up behind the station. I volunteered at this tent, serving food and helping Ukrainians find their way around resources at the train station. The volunteers came from all over the world, including the US, Ukraine, and Poland, as well as Japan, Germany, and elsewhere. Symbolic support for Ukraine was also visible around Poland, from Ukrainian flags and advertisements, to posters announcing humanitarian aid gathering points, to people raising money all over the capital for Ukrainians. It was obvious how widespread concern for Ukrainian refugees was. I also volunteered at a free shop where mostly Polish people helped supply Ukrainian refugees with groceries, cleaning supplies, cosmetics, and donated clothes. Almost all of the volunteers at the shop were Poles who had no background in humanitarian aid. They had regular full-time jobs and they just wanted to help. Some of the volunteers were also Ukrainians. Some of them had been in Poland for a few years and wanted to help their compatriots. And others of them were also refugees, and they just wanted to help because so many others had helped them along the way. Of course, these good intentions didn't always translate into exactly what others needed. At the free shop, volunteers spent a lot of their time sorting through donations of clothing that could not be used. One of the donation supervisors told me that many people wanted to help, so they would just clean out their closets and expect the free shop to take whatever they were given. That actually often created more work for volunteers, and people didn't always give what refugees needed the most. Another anecdote also illustrates this problem. One day I was helping to pack groceries and we received a donation of żurek, or Polish sour soup. The first problem was that many of the jars had already expired, so the volunteers at the free shop had to deal with those jars. The second problem was that most Ukrainians didn't know what żurek was, and if they did, they didn't like it. While the Polish volunteers insisted that it was delicious and I should just give people several jars, that donation was at least 100 jars, and Ukrainians did not really want to take it. One of the women told me, "Of course I don't want this, I make my own żurek." The glass jars were also very heavy, and a lot of people were carrying huge bags of groceries in addition to whatever clothing they needed from the shop, and they also had small children, sometimes in strollers and sometimes not. And sometimes they were going all the way across town with these heavy bags. Not very many people wanted to add glass jars of food that they had never tried to their haul. Despite these stories, the overwhelming sentiment among Ukrainian refugees was gratitude. Every time I volunteered, either at the train station or at the free shop, someone would recount to me, close to tears, how many people had helped them along the way to get to Warsaw. Some had waited for hours at the border, and they couldn't believe that some American who had no connection to Ukraine was waiting to greet them at the border and give them a hot meal. Some of them couldn't believe that they could just come to this free shop and get clothing for the changing weather, as they had come in the winter and they didn't have any t-shirts. Unfortunately, these initiatives are difficult to sustain indefinitely. The free shop already closed at the end of June, although the volunteers who work there are trying to establish some other initiatives to help refugees, such as Polish language classes. Unfortunately, Polish government programs are ending too. As of June 1st, Ukrainians can no longer ride public transportation in most Polish cities for free. As of July 1st, the Polish households that were hosting Ukrainian refugees are no longer able to receive a daily cash payment to help support them. A lot of Ukrainians are returning home as well, but others, especially those from the hardest hit eastern regions, have no option but to stay in Poland or to move to another part of Europe. Of course, as we've seen, volunteer-based initiatives can be more flexible than those that are established by major international organizations or state institutions. So we can hope that refugees' needs can be met by these amazing volunteers who can adapt to changing circumstances as the war goes on. Thank you so much for tuning in.